We're going to move on with a look through some of the top headlines in the international newspapers with Diptyque Laurent. Hello there.
Hi, Kat.
And just the other day, we had one of the biggest newspapers in the UK, the most read, The Sun, coming out in favour of the UK leaving the European Union with a very flashy front page headline. Now we've got a very sober newspaper weighing in as well.
That's right. The Financial Times is calling voters to vote to stay in the Union, a very strong stance from the financial paper. They say, I quote, "We are Great Britain. We have a contribution to make to a more prosperous, safer world." It's a very defiant call from the FT, which also laments the referendum campaign that it says has, quote, "split the country."
All right, so a lot of papers talking about a slightly bizarre episode that took place yesterday. Britain known for being eccentric. This was British eccentricity to the max, wasn't it? A flotilla face-off on the River Thames. Tell us more.
A flotilla battle, that's right. You see the photo right there on the front page of the Wall Street Journal. Very interesting that I guess they've chosen that to publish this photo on their front page. Britain, they say, is taking to the River Thames in the EU debate. Now, the camps for the Remain and Leave sides led protests through these flotillas on the River Thames on Wednesday. The Leave campaign was led by Nigel Farage, the UKIP party leader, and Bob Geldof. There were about 60 vessels in the river in what Nigel Farage says was a protest protest to highlight the impact that the European Union has had on local fishing industries. But it ended up being sort of a slanging match, really, or a slagging match, if you like, with Bob Geldof saying that Nigel Farage is, quote, "no fisherman's friend." And Farage accused Geldof of mocking the fishing industry. So
trying to be serious, but really descending into farce there. I mean, that's how it looks. And it is a serious issue. You have got a lot of celebrities, though, coming in, all sorts of different arguments and different angles that everyone's taking.
This is an article in the Wall Street Journal with a really nice sort of thespian play on words, to Brexit or not to Brexit. And indeed, they do talk about how people in theatre, people in cinema, people in music are using their craft to really push for this, the vote that Britain should stay in the Union. And I want to highlight, for instance, a German photographer. He's not even British. He's a German photographer who lives in London. His name is Wolfgang Tillmans. He's created a series of posters with catchphrases like the one up there, "No man is an island, no country by itself," or "Say you're in if you're in." These posters have been plastered all over the streets of London in this really big push urging people to vote to stay.
That's certainly a very massive show of people using their democratic rights, if nothing else. So let's move on to news from Orlando, Florida, how that's being seen in the international papers. Of course, the local newspaper following every single last development in the investigation.
Well, eyes have been, of course, on the Orlando Sentinel. Now, this article really struck me because it was so poignant. Basically, you can read more about it, and it's well worth a read because it is very heart-touching, if you like. It talks about a Florida-based journalist who returned to Orlando to cover the aftermath of the shooting. And in fact, this journalist, he's an AP video journalist. He worked at the Pulse nightclub as a college student. In what he says was he was a straight man working at a gay dance club to put himself through college. And he talks about how warm the welcome was from the gay community. He also talks about the difficulty in returning back to this place and trying to stay objective and how difficult it is to distance himself from what he sees in his camera lens. And I think it's a very strong sort of opinion piece.
Well, an interesting perspective indeed. It has been such a harrowing week for Orlando. We've also had that really shocking news about a child being taken by an alligator at Disney World in Florida.
That's right. There's been a lot of, I guess, opinions about who's to blame, if there was any way to prevent this. And the Washington Post has published a very in-depth piece, actually, with a whole bunch of legal opinions. It's really interesting because basically the bottom line is nothing. This was just an unfortunate, it was bad luck. It was just
the family was wading in this Seven Seas lagoon.
That's right. Yes, it's a man-made lake, but even experts say that there's no way of stopping alligators wandering into a man-made lake. lake.
Should Disney, though, have said to people, do not go in there at all?
Well,
Did they say that?
no, there was no way of preventing that, and that's really what the main line of the article is. They say also we have to take into account this was prime season for alligator attacks. It's the end of the mating season, and the type of alligator that attacked this little boy was sort of a young male who had looked for sort of smaller pools of water to avoid attacks from the sort of more dominant male. So really, the bottom line is, I mean, Floridians and people in Florida are very well aware about the alligator attack. There was just nothing we could do.
All right, let's move on to Euro 2016. The violence really seems to be overshadowing the competition. I can't remember a major football tournament where the fan violence took such precedence.
There's been a lot of articles. In fact, it's interesting you mentioned that. There have been a lot of articles that compare the Euro to South Africa, to Brazil, even Brazil, a football nation that's mad about football. Basically, dozens of Russian fans were in police custody over the Marseille riots on the weekend, but also over Wednesday night's unrest in Lille after Russia lost to Slovakia. Now, this hasn't pleased Russia, and I want to show an article from Nouvelle Obs magazine, a French magazine, basically talking about how the French ambassador in Russia has been called up over those arrests, and Russia is now threatening sort of diplomatic tensions with France over this incident. So it's really a case of how football has sort of strained diplomatic tensions.
All right, we've just got time for something much more frivolous. We need a bit of frivolity in the mornings. An avocado crime wave, you heard me correctly, in New Zealand.
I'm sure Kiwis who are watching us are very angry that only these kind of stories make it into the news when we're talking about New Zealand.
Sorry, New Zealand.
It's very, very important. Kiwis, apparently avocados are ripe for picking, or rather stealing in New Zealand. There is a huge demand for avocados, and there is actually an undersupply of avocados, so much so that Kiwis have been stealing them off orchards and selling them on what is now a thriving avocado black market. And just an idea, the price of an avocado last year cost around $1.65. It's now at $4.50.
It's time to start growing our own avocados, I think. Thanks very much, Diptyque Laurent there with the International Press Review.